All right, so I think we're ready to get going here. Um, just for those of you who are coming in, this is the first breakout of the day. So we just wanted to let everybody know that although the previous session was hosted through the presentation platform, all of the breakouts are hosted in traditional Zoom rooms, which means you have the ability to unmute yourself. And mute yourself and share your screen or not share your screen. And so we ask everyone to keep their mute buttons on. And if you have questions, to feel free to put them in the chat. And we will have moderators taking questions in the chat as well. And with that, let's get started. So the name of our presentation today from Chaffey College is Guiding Principles for Online Student Support Training. And let's introduce ourselves. My name is Matthew Morin. I'm the director of When I'm Not a Stormtrooper.
Melissa Sakumpong, counselor and the Guided Pathway leads for student services.
Hi, I'm Christina Holderness, and I am the instructional specialist for the STEM Success Center.
Hello, my name is Adriana Arce, and I am the distance education support specialist.
Hi, I'm Rosanna Osmanian, and I'm an instructional specialist at the Arts Communication and Design Success Center.
Hello, everybody. I'm Selene Pineda. I'm one of the reference librarians at Chaffey College, and also I'm a distance education coach.
Great, thank you. So Chaffey College is a two-year community college in San Bernardino County, and we serve around 26,000 students in Rancho Cucamonga, Chino Hills, Fontana, Montclair, Ontario, and Upland. And like all of the colleges and universities throughout higher education in the United States, during the spring break or during the spring period of 2020, Chaffey College transitioned all student support services to 100% online due to the COVID pandemic. And this also included success centers, which are tutoring and supplemental learning activities, library, counseling, as well as admissions and records, financial aid, and so forth. Ironically, our vision for spring 2020 in January, and this was the copy of our spring schedule that we put out, was going to be creating a sense of belonging. And I think this picture here shows how physically relational our idea of sense of belonging is, right? That if we were going to foster sense of belonging on our campus, it had to be something that was, in our minds, something physical. And the COVID pandemic really upended that idea and forced us to rethink what sense of belonging and community means, but in a virtual space. Of course, in instruction, there's a long tradition of online distance education, instruction, theory, method, pedagogy, and training, even certification. And so when the pandemic hit, moving all courses online, while not easy, especially for CTE and lab courses, there was at least a tradition of thinking around moving courses that were face-to-face online. And we could scale up training to all faculty, even to the point of creating an MOU with the Labor Association so that all faculty were required to complete a formally established DE training. And this is just a little snapshot here of that week that we all learned that we were going to be leaving the campus, and all faculty needed to participate in distance education training. This is the distance education training schedule for that week. It was wild, and we lifted this up in just a few days. But when it came to online student support services across campus, all of those services that students need before they even enter into the classroom or while they're on their path, there was no precedent or model for lifting up all of those services online. And it's much more complex than online instruction because of the fact that each student service is completely different in its process. So there are massive amounts of disaggregation and variation in the nature of online student support services that made it very difficult to scale up an online process, let alone any kind of training for all of the staff and faculty that participate in those services. So we had to rethink our framework, our mental frameworks around online learning and online higher education to move from siloed structures, which exist in the physical spaces of student services, where your student service building is the place where students go to meet the financial aid person at the counter, to meet the registrar, to pay their bill. And instead think about digital ecosystems. How do we integrate all of this work? And when we moved all of these services online, what we also noticed is that there was no training structure to help the staff and the faculty, as well as the managers, become proficient in the nature of all those diverse processes. And so we set out to develop a student support training that was similar and paralleled the online instructional training and certification. But because of the diversity of online student supports, each training had to have a unique pathway, but also we developed some universal guiding principles on the front end and some common online student support tools that we felt like were necessary for all faculty and staff on campus to be familiar with. And then after that, step 2 is when those who are in the training modules move into their own specific area training and receive a digital badge at the end, certifying their competency in that particular domain. So with that, I will turn you over to Christina Holderness, who will tell you about the step 1 and step 2 of this training process.
Thank you, Matt. So as you've learned so far, we begin our pathway for online student support certification with our guiding principles. We believe that these 5 guiding principles are essential to providing equitable online student support. The 5 guiding principles that we chose for step 1 of our training is digital literacies, equity and anti-racism, accessibility, sense of belonging, and student metacognition. These 5 guiding principles provide a foundation for the pathway to supporting our students online in an equitable manner that not only takes each of these unique guiding principles that can stand on their own as these pillars to support us, but we also have to consider how they're interwoven into each other and how our understanding of digital literacies and access to technology, understanding how to create effective communication, plays a role intertwined with our goals to provide equity, to provide accessible content for our students, for multiple learning modalities and universal design of learning, and to create a sense of belonging, because community is key to everything that we do when we're supporting our students online. So we begin with these 5 guiding principles to create that foundation for our online student support faculty and staff. They start in this step. And we kind of noticed as we designed this step that there's really also a microcosm for each one of these guiding principles, and we are working to develop a more robust step 3 in the future to really go into these guiding principles. But our step 1 provides the foundation that we hope all of our learners who are working in student support to gain that foundation of guiding principles to take them through the next steps for learning about student support tools and gaining the confidence and courage to learn about new tools that they can use. And finally, as they go into step 3, they begin to learn about how they can implement these guiding principles into their student support at each individual department of our campus. So after completing step 1, Our online student support faculty and staff will go to step 2. Step 2 has a variety of campus resources that we use on campus fairly universally. Many of us use Zoom, Cranium Cafe, LibChat, which is a feature in LibGuides that allowed us to create online chat service for our students at the start of the pandemic and throughout this time to provide them with additional online student support. We also have modules that go over Canvas because we use Canvas very often to provide online student support. And we have information about Camtasia because we have found it very relevant to create digital content. So with these 2 steps, we begin to build the foundations of the guiding principles that motivate us to pursue data to find places where we can create more equitable practices and ways that we can use our digital content, digital literacies to create effective communication and really develop that sense of belonging and student metacognition as our learners go into step 3. So at this point, I will turn it over to Roseanne for step 3 with the Success Centers.
Thank you. So there are currently 8 different success centers. 4 of those success centers are at our Rancho Cucamonga campus. We have a success center at our Chino and Fontana campus. And then we also have a success center at our campuses inside the California Institute for Men and Women. And when the pandemic hit, the geography of these spaces shrunk down to 1 online. And so we felt it was very important to be able to train this collective group of instructors who would be serving students online. And so the next video is going to show you a little bit about that Canvas course and this specific certification for faculty working in success centers. Oh, I don't think I hear the volume.
Approximate overview. Starting at the home page, the training course overview and objectives are presented, including links to each of the modules. Approximate completion times are listed in each module. The course starts out with a brief recap of the history of the Success Centers and the roles Success Center faculty play in its operation. Following this, there is a review of Zoom, which is where the virtual Success Centers are housed. The course also trains instructors on how to use Nearpod, an interactive presentation tool for online workshops. Finally, the module ends with strategies on troubleshooting technology issues and adhering to FERPA standards in an online setting. The next section on learning pedagogy is meant to frame digital best practices around how people best learn. The trainers felt this was important because they did not want instructors to lose sight of the impact learning processes have on how learning environments are structured and how digital tools are used to support students' learning. The next sections focus on the 3 types of support activities that the Success Center faculty engage in: teaching workshops, tutoring students and reviewing directed learning activities. Directed learning activities are individual student activities focused on a particular course topic. These three modules help Success Center faculty learn how to teach and facilitate these activities online. Finally, there is a short module that informs Success Center faculty on important verification and learning outcomes forms. We tried to keep the training assessment pieces simple, keeping in mind the number of faculty who would be trained, as well as the demand on staff who would be tracking the training course completion. Therefore, we utilized short, self-graded quizzes, 2 discussions, self-grading play posit boards, and 1 workshop slide upload. Although these tools and processes are anticipated to change, the trainers felt that this baseline training was necessary in order to onboard Success Center faculty to support students online.
All right, thank you. That was great, Roseanne, for providing that video. And kind of pretty much for the library, we also have the similar modules where it presents information and tools that the librarians and the library will be using to support our students. On this slide that you can see, we have pretty much four modules there. And the first one, since we do have a one-shot, what we call one-shot is basically one-time instruction for classes that librarians do. We provide information and tools and resources that librarians can use in order to guide them in presenting this one-shot instructions for classes, as well as workshops. And one thing that we recently did the past few years, it's being embedded a library embedded in Canvas courses. And this has come up, this is very useful now since COVID because everything's online, so everybody's using the Canvas shells. And we have the training presents information on how the steps on how to embed the how faculty can embed librarians in the course shells. The next three, LibChat, LibGuides, and LibWizard are part of a platform called SpringShare, what provides these tools that are widely used in many libraries, and within our modules present all the information and the steps on how to use them and how to apply them, as well as examples of how it would look like when you're providing one-on-one service to students, and also in courses in Canvas. If we have a range of how to do a live chat with them, we also create what we call research guides for students to get information on specific topics. And also we have created tutorials using the LibWizard, which has actually been very successful, and these are very interactive tutorials. And And much like the video that you saw earlier, at the end of all of the modules, for each module that we present in the library, we also have a knowledge check for the user that's taking the training, and also a quiz just to help and see if they have followed or learned all the material. And at the very end, they also get the last step where they will be certified on this particular section. So we are smaller groups, so this is basically the tools and things that we use at the library. So now I'm gonna hand it back to the next person. Thank you.
Thanks, Elena. And so our step number 3 for counseling really goes back to kind of the design principles that Christina talked about earlier, where we're trying to scaffold people's learning, and we're doing macro to micro. And so the second step kind of covers this very broad, basic, type of learning for Connex Ed. That's the platform that we're currently using to serve students online, either by appointments or walk-in. And so then the idea was for counselors to go into step 3 and get a more advanced kind of understanding of how to use the technology, build some competencies around like how to use the tool, as well as serve students in this virtual space. So overall, that course contains 6 modules. It takes them roughly anywhere between like 4 to 5 hours to complete, depending on the learner. And so the same design principles is used as we dig deeper into this particular course. And so we start with a general overview of like Connex Ed, what does the tool provide, learning about the company. Then we go into scheduling and the directory, how to navigate, as well as Cranium Cafe and the lobby itself. And then more features within Cranium Cafe. The other thing that we created when we moved online were lots of resources, but housed in a single place. We call it the Counseling Hub, as well as some other things that you can find that counselors can use at their disposal. And so that is covered in step number 5. And then we also have best practices, things that are kind of near and dear to our counseling profession. And so we also put that in the training to make sure that whether we're serving students face-to-face or online, a lot of those practices are still going to continue. I'm going to pass it on to Adriana to talk about really the huge piece, which is the back end infrastructure that everyone might be interested in.
Thanks, Melissa. So you'll notice that throughout the presentation, you got a glimpse of, where this is being housed. And essentially it's being housed in our LMS Canvas. Everyone's essentially on it, right? The reason for that, there's a lot of reasons for that. It's a natural place to do professional development for all faculty, given that all of our students interact with it. And then in the current climate, exclusively interact with it for instruction, but it's a perfect place to provide instructional support and student services as well. And for our faculty, it was just a natural place to provide professional development for them. And what we've done is created a workflow within each course to go ahead and allow faculty, after completing one course through sequenced modules, to then self-enroll into their next course, and so on and so forth, until they complete their full strand of training. Everyone at Chafee starts in the Distance Education Hub. It is a single place where all of our faculty, staff, managers are placed. They are placed into groups, and then everyone is also able to access all resources that deal with online supports, online instruction, etc. So we work within our distance education team to add everyone into the hub, and then that's the starting point for everyone to kind of navigate their workflow. And they self-enroll into step 1, then into step 2, then into their specific strand of training. So overall, all the steps included, it's about an 8-hour training once you go through step 1, 2, and 3. And we track that within distance education like Matt started off saying, traditionally, we had training for our instructional faculty who were teaching in the classroom and needed a lot of those supports. But we recognize that we need the other piece of that, which is instructional support and student services for students. So this is the place where we decided to also track, given that we were already doing it. We worked with our IT team to track within our SIS. So that's a feature that's a little bit more customized, but we were able to work with our IT team to provide full reports for deans, academic areas, instructional, non-instructional areas, and student support areas to see where faculty land in their professional development journey on campus. And they have a lot of opportunities. This isn't the only opportunity for them if they'd like to also participate in the instructional training. The Distance Education Hub is kind of like their landing place. And that's really it. It's actually pretty simple, the back end of it, because Canvas allows for it.
Great. So we have a Q&A here. And so a little bit of time for Q&A. And I'm curious, for those of you who have been monitoring the chat, are there any questions that have come up that we might want to answer? So I see one in here that's asking, can we repeat the title of step 3? So that's actually a great question. As Adriana just mentioned, step 3 is interesting because it really doesn't have one singular title. It has multiple titles. Step 1 is the same for everybody, which is really online support principles. And step 2 is the same for everyone, which is online student support tools that are kind of common to anyone who would be working in student support. But then step 3 is where each particular area kind of does like a breakout, if you will, into their own pathway, because that work is so specialized. Unlike traditional instruction with distance education, where everybody would be basically going through the same pedagogical path. When it comes to student support, because counseling is so different from tutoring, so different from library, so different from financial aid, step 3 is actually a different title for each different unit. So the online counseling certification is the title for counselors doing step 3, and online success center is the title for instructional support specialists or tutors who are doing step 3, and online library certification is the title for step 3 for librarians. Did you guys want to add anything to that?
No. Oh, well, who was going first? Do you want to go first, Melissa? Was it Melissa or Adriana? Oh, go ahead. I was going to say, the step 3 is great for, our online student support faculty and staff in each of those individual areas to acquire certification. But I also would find it interesting, like personally, I kind of want to do all of the step 3s so that even though I work in the success centers, can learn about all of the different student support that we have on campus, because we all are interconnected. So I just want to highlight that as well, that we do see there's a potential that these are also informative for the campus student support structure as a whole.
Yeah, we're starting to notice that because, we just launched, and we're starting to get lots of interest around all of the specialized areas, and the badging that goes with it is really the badge that pertains to that last step. And so the idea was to provide relevant training to each area, although highly specialized. Going back to what we're working on in our guided pathways at our institution, And so in terms of like the student experience, they're experiencing this one kind of singular pathway that's really specific to them. But in terms of the back-end infrastructure that we have at the campus, we're working really hard doing all of these things to make sure they experience what is relevant to them. And so we're doing the same thing with this professional development for non-instructional faculty. So we want to make sure that whatever it is that they're experiencing in their current work environment, we're providing PD that is relevant to that work. And so that's why step number one, step number two is kind of in that centralized place. And then as they break down, they'll start to see more customized training.
We have a few questions actually. So, how have our faculty and staff responded to this effort? And then also, coming from Leslie, what's kind of the incentive around it? I think those two questions kind of tie in together. So we just launched, like Melissa said, we previously had training around like traditional distance education training. So faculty were accustomed to having to do training, and there were some incentives around it. But I think more than ever now, with this launch of training, we had like one-time funds in order to fund faculty to complete this training. And also we are at our campus doing flexible flex. So any training that a faculty goes through is eligible for flexible flex credit. So that's also an incentive for our faculty. After this one-time stipend, they'll be able to participate and continue to count that toward their. But I don't know if anybody else would like to speak to any specific feedback that they've received from anyone in their area.
I would also like to highlight the potentially growing sort of domain of digital credentialing as an incentive. I think right now, from most people, the idea of a badge isn't that different than just a PDF of a certification, just like a PDF that's just a flat picture of like, so-and-so has completed the distance education training or the online student support training. But I think the fact that we're doing this work now in Badger and that the digital certifications that faculty and staff receive have a little bit more depth with them, in that they're blockchain encrypted, and that they can put them on their digital CVs or on their LinkedIn accounts and all these things. I don't think it's really sunk in that that's a huge incentive at this point, but I think over time, as that becomes a more familiar type of currency, I think it will become a greater incentive.
Any other questions? Feel free to also, you don't just have to type in the chat at this point. You could also unmute yourself and, ask away.
While we're waiting for any other questions, I thought we might throw out one of the guided pathways questions for this summit is how, to us, the presenters that we're going to represent to the group as a theme throughout all of these breakouts, is how has this improved the student experience? And so I'm going to toss that out to you guys, the presenters, and see how you respond.
Well, I think this particular question for me, kind of being on the, I'm not in a specialized area, just kind of looking at it from, a different as to how this will continue, has improved and will continue to improve the student experience, is because our faculty will have to navigate the same digital ecosystems our students will. And then they'll be able to provide that additional support with them and be able to actually help them navigate, not just through their, through the service that they're going through, like through our student support services or our instructional support, but also through their instruction on campus. So I think that and then our guiding principles is just something we've weaved in through all the training. So I think that's how students will feel that impact.
Yeah, and I also oh, go ahead, Roseanne.
I think because so much of our work, deals with a lot of live support, a lot of synchronous support. I mean, we do have asynchronous communication with students, but because we're, in Zoom rooms with students, so many faculty told me when we first started, a year and a half ago, was that they wanted to feel confident when they were working with students online. And they wanted to know the tools so that they could help students well and appropriately. And so just from that comment from them, I feel like this training is going to build their confidence, which is going to directly impact students when they're interacting with faculty in our Zoom and Cranium Cafe spaces.
Yeah. And so, and a lot of our work, because it's, face to face, professional development has it hasn't done a really good job of incorporating technology. And so this was a really great opportunity for us to kind of, go and teach digital literacy, that technical competency that people really needed to serve students well online. There's lots of research that shows that, student services areas weren't meeting students' expectations in terms of that. And then like the parallel between what they were experiencing in the classrooms was very different than what they were experiencing online with student support areas. And so this is definitely going to improve the student experience. I know we're coming to an end.
Yep, we have about 3 more minutes left, and this will be a hard cutoff at 12 o'clock. And so thank you everybody for coming. And if you have any more questions, feel free to reach out to any of us with your questions. And yeah, we're hoping this will be the beginning of many other colleges creating online student support, professional development pathways. It's really a kind of underdeveloped space. The only one that we kind of found in our research that was robust was the CVC OEI's online counseling training, but for through @ONE, but that still is just like a counseling specific track, nothing that sort of does a big umbrella. So yeah, if you want to build one of these at your college, let's coordinate and do it.
Yes, and I echo that, Matt. Yeah, if you want to reach out to us, because I had to do some extensive research to piece together a lot of things for the different theories of digital literacy, or how you can provide online support services for students and where those needs are. So we have, the research that we could get, we have that available and we utilized it. So yes, feel free to contact us. And I think that's a few seconds before noon. So
thanks everybody.
Bye.